Hi, I'm Amy, and welcome to a chronological study of the life of Jesus. Join me as we study the Gospels in order using John MacArthur's book, One Perfect Life. Welcome to Lesson 19. In Lesson 18, we talked about Jesus being presented at the temple and the faithfulness of his parents and Simeon and Anna and all the people there and their reactions to seeing the Messiah. And so this lesson is going to be another reaction. This one is going to be the Magi that come. So this lesson 19 is the Magi pay homage to Israel's true king. And so the Magi come, and they come from the east, and they meet up with Herod, and from there they go and see Jesus. And so we're going to see that story and how all of Jerusalem and other people react to meeting Jesus, the Messiah. So first we'll read in the scripture, and then I've got 5 points I want to make. So we're in Matthew chapter 2, where the Magi pay homage to Israel's true king. So Matthew 2. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. So they said to him, In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed for their own country another way. So from that, the first point I want to talk about is the wise men from the east, because they're the characters that are coming from the east, and that was probably Persia, and that may have been what is modern day Iraq or Iran. So this is the ancient Near East, and they were traveling, and they meet Herod. Now these wise men are astrologers, and the Bible may call them magicians. But they would see the stars, they would chart the stars, and they would notice if anything changed. And so they have seen this star and from the east, and they have traveled to Jerusalem to find this king. And how many wise men are there? How many magi or magicians are there? The Bible actually isn't clear on that, which is interesting because we think that there should be 3. Because in every nativity set and we think 3 kings of Orient are, and the Christmas carols and things like that, we think that there's 3. In the nativity set, there are 3. But there's really not a clear picture of how many there were. People think that there were 3 because they gave 3 gifts. But we don't actually know how many men there were, but they were wealthy men. They may have been kings or advisors to kings or something like that. So these are high-ranking, powerful, wise men that are looking at the stars and notice a change and are very curious, and they seek out what's different, right? And so the star is very supernatural because it guides them, and it rests in Jerusalem, I suppose, to lead them there. And then it goes on to Bethlehem, and it rests over Jesus. So the star guides them. And there's been speculation. Was it a comet? Was it the planets aligning? And people have looked back at star charts and things like that to this time period to try to see what maybe it was. But honestly, what we really need to take away from it is that it was a supernatural act of God. It was God making some kind of light appear. And it's much like the Old Testament when he would appear in a pillar of fire or a pillar like a cloud to lead the Israelites through. So God appears in this star and he's leading these Magi to find Jesus, to see Jesus. And Jesus was in somebody's home by this time in Jerusalem, because later in the next lesson we'll talk about Herod. He wants to kill the babies that are 2 years and under, the boys, to try to stamp out this king that was born. And so based off the time that they saw the star, Herod determined that it would be children that maybe were 2 years or younger. So Jesus could potentially be up to 2 years old at this point, because when it came in, it used the word child. It didn't say baby or newborn baby or anything like that. The word that they use indicates that he was a small child, like he was, a toddler age. So he's possibly up to the age of 2 at this point. So he's in someone's home. The star has guided them. And my question with this is, you've got these men from the east. They're not Jewish. They're astrologers. They're and that's not to say that they practice like dark arts or anything like that. They just would watch the stars to see the changes, and maybe they did make speculations and things like that, but they saw his star. And what if that is some kind of supernatural event meant just for those Magi? That means God led them, and then as they're following the star, it leads them straight to Bethlehem, and it rests over that home. So whatever it was, whatever bright phenomenon it was God leading them. And so these men aren't Jewish. They're not followers of God necessarily. So why did God include the wise men? Why did God involve the wise men in this story? Why did he lead them to Jesus? And I don't really have a great answer to that. There's not really a prophecy that says that these wise men are going to come. But there is a verse in Numbers 24:17. that is interesting, and I will read that. It says, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come forth from Jacob, which is Israel, and a scepter shall rise from Israel. And a scepter indicates kingship and rule. And shall crush through the forehead of Moab and tear down all the sons of Sheth, which is an Old Testament prophecy type thing. But so it's the star and this ruler and this scepter and all of this. And so perhaps that may be alluding to the fact that there's going to be a star that came, and that there's a ruler. Maybe this story, the star and the wise men, maybe fits a prophecy that could point to that. And then there's other verses in the Bible that talk about, kings will bow down and things like that. And some of those are in the Psalms that talk about kings. Psalm 68 and Psalm 72 specifically have verses that mention kings bowing or kings coming to worship. And I don't know. It's not really mentioned that the wise men are part of a prophecy. So why did God reveal his Messiah to non-Jewish people? And I don't know if it just maybe goes back to understanding that his gospel is for all people. And I think that when we get to it, and I'll just allude to it now, that Herod's reaction and the scribes and Pharisees' reaction was wholly different from the Magi. The Magi traveled very far intentionally and brought gifts to lavish Jesus with these gifts. And our lives should be that same level of dedication. Our lives should be marked by that same level of sacrifice. That these men that don't serve God, they don't know anything about Jesus, but they travel intentionally, bringing their best to bring to Jesus. And I think we sometimes find it difficult to do the bare minimum. And that's a sad state of the Christian church, but instead of bringing our best to God, sometimes we find it hard to do the bare minimum. We find it hard to just go to church. We find it hard to pray. We find it hard to read the Bible. We find it hard to carve out space in our minds and in our hearts for God, the creator of all things. And that is not what would characterize these men. They didn't find it difficult to do the bare minimum. They went the extra mile and miles and miles to see him. They brought him their best. And I think we can learn from this that if these Gentile men that don't follow and weren't looking for a Messiah necessarily, they weren't looking for the consolation of Israel like we talked about in the previous video, but God still led them there because they intentionally brought their best, and they sacrificed, and they traveled, and they focused on God. And I think that that is a very good example to live up to, is to always bring God our best. Always give God what he is worthy to have, which is every bit of what we have, every bit of ourselves. And so let's not be people that find it difficult to do the bare minimum. And the second point I have is the leaders' reactions. And what I want to talk about is Herod and the scribes and Pharisees. So the groups that we've got are the wise men, which are Gentiles. They're not Jewish. And then you got the Jewish leader. You got Herod. Now Herod was a puppet king at best. He was propped up by the Roman government. He was put in place to kind of be a pseudo leader that was partially Jewish, but he wasn't from the line of Jacob. He was from the line of Esau. So he was an Edomite, which throughout the history has been an enemy of Israel. They've had some hard times and some fighting and some warfare. And so he's not really a follower of the Jewish faith as the Jewish people that he's leading are. And that led to some hard times, except Herod, he built their temple and he did a lot of good things for the country, but his heart wasn't for God. And so Herod feared losing his throne. If there's this new king that's been born, I and my dynasty will not survive this. And so his reaction was very troubled. It said he was troubled, but it also said that all of Jerusalem was troubled with him. And I don't know if this is just the leaders or if they were just all in awe or whatever, but he calls to the scribes and the Pharisees. And these are the people that the scribes and Pharisees, scribes study and transcribe the law and should know the law. The chief priests are the ones that lead the temple worship and service in the temple, so they know how to do all the worship. And then the Pharisees were the teachers of the law, and they followed strict adherence and application of the Old Testament law. So these are the big dogs of the Jewish faith. And he calls to them and he says, okay, these Magi have showed up and they said there's going to be a king born. Where will this king be born? And they search the scriptures and they find Micah 5:2 that says that the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. So they give him Bethlehem. But oddly enough, they had the prophecy, but they didn't have the faith and desire to follow through with it. So if you have the answer and you've been told the Messiah, the one you've been looking for or supposedly have been looking for, has been born, but you don't bother to go check it out, and you have the answers, but you don't bother to put your feet on the path to take you there, and you're troubled by this, but you don't have the heart to follow through with it. And I just think that they are leading the people in a religion that they don't even bother to check out and see if what this whole religion is about is here. Am I even going to bother to go see? And they don't. And I think that is that's very damning for these people, because you've got these Gentiles that they come and they're very excited and they bring all this and they're waiting to see the king and the Jews, and they say, well, he'll be born in Bethlehem, and send them on their way. And they don't follow them to Bethlehem. And so their faith has just become a habit, just become a job to them, and a routine, and kind of thoughtless for them, you know. And I pray that we never become people that have a routine kind of faith that just is kind of a habit. Now, there's great things about habits of Bible reading and prayer, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this thoughtless, I get up and I check a box just to do it. I get up and I pray my morning prayer, but my heart's not in it, and I read the Bible, but I'm not really paying attention, and I move forward. I go to church, but I'm not involved, and I don't really care about the people. I don't really listen to the sermon. I don't sing the songs, but I check the box because I went to church. And I'm a churchgoer. And so I think that these people have gotten to be thoughtless in their faith. And I just pray that we're never that. I pray that we always have a very real and a very tangible faith that that has some flesh on it that we can really feel, and that our faith is what we wake up and put our feet on, and that's what we walk in. The just live by faith is what the Bible says. And so may our faith be what we put our life on, that we build our life around, and we don't do it strictly out of habit or anything, but it's our desire and our yearning to follow God and to know the things of God, and to have this strong seeking mentality, that I wish to seek out the Messiah always, but not out of habit, but out of desire. So I think the lesson from the leader's reaction is just that they did not have the heart to follow through with it, or the desire to, but the wise men, juxtaposed, are just yearning. And so may we be the ones that yearn to follow Jesus. And the third one is, I want to talk about the Bethlehem prophecy. So we're in Micah, Micah chapter 5, verse 2. But as for you, Bethlehem, Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. His goings forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. So the prophecy here, what does it say? What is it saying? It's talking about, it's Micah, and this is written in the 8th century BC. So this is a long hundreds of years before Jesus comes on the scene. And he's writing, and like I said before, prophecy has a now and a future, like a now and a not yet aspect to it. So what's going on there may have been true in Micah's time, but then it has a future fulfillment, a more perfect, complete fulfillment in Christ. And so this is talking about Jesus, obviously, and a ruler and a shepherd will come forth. So what Luke says is that, I'm on the wrong page again. What Matthew says is that the Bethlehem land of Judah, you're not least among it, but out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people. And that idea doesn't necessarily come from Micah, but it may be from 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 2, where it says, previously when Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel out and in, and the Lord said to you, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will be a ruler over Israel. So that is talking about David and how he would be king and how he would shepherd and how he would rule. And we know that Jesus ultimately is the good shepherd and he is King of Kings. So Jesus will come out of Bethlehem and he will rule the people, and he will shepherd the people as a loving shepherd cares for his sheep. And that's what the prophecy is saying. It's talking about Jesus as king and as a gentle pastoral shepherd who cares for his people. So Jesus is king and Jesus is the good shepherd. And if you read Psalm 23, we talked about it in a couple videos ago, Psalm 23 and John chapter 10, where Jesus calls himself the good shepherd and who lays his life down for the sheep. And then Psalm 23 about how he leads us by still waters and how he makes us lie down in green pastures. Just the safety and the rest and the security and the provision of that good shepherd. So the Bethlehem prophecy is promising the shepherd ruler that will come out of Bethlehem. And that, I think, is the takeaway. It's just understanding Jesus is king and he is shepherd. The fourth point is the wise men's reaction. And I've already alluded to it, the wise men's reaction to Jesus in juxtaposition to in comparison to how Herod and the other leaders acted. The wise men came worshipful. They came joyful. They fell down before him. They sought him out. They gifted him 3 amazing gifts, which we'll talk about next. But in the presence of Jesus, we've got to worship him. They came not knowing that he's the Messiah or anything like that. They called him the King of the Jews, and they didn't even follow necessarily the Jewish religion probably, but they came and they saw him for who he was, the Son of God, the Messiah, the one that is the Savior, the salvation lies in him. And they came and they fell down before him and they worshiped him. And so how does the reaction differ from them to Herod and the other leaders? And it's just that they didn't give a rip, it seems. And then the wise men were just lush and they couldn't stop. And they brought all the positive emotion, the happy, the joyful, the giving, the generosity, the love, the sacrifice, the intent to get there and then to worship. And What must Mary and Joseph have been thinking when they saw this entourage arrive with all these gifts for their son, and they fall down before the baby, the child, and worship him? That's never happened to them before. So that's an interesting concept, that this child is being worshiped by these foreign dignitaries, these leaders. There's something going on here. Everything as it's unfolding and happening, Mary and Joseph are watching this, and they're seeing this happen, and they have to be thinking, what is going on here? This is magnificent to behold, but this is also very much new to us, and we have nothing to compare it to. What is going on, And so they get to watch God's plan of salvation unfolding, and these people reacting to Jesus with such worship and love, and that had to be wonderful to see, honestly. And so I think the takeaway there is just, let's be more like those Magi. Let's worship when we're in the presence of God. Let's seek Jesus out, to worship him, to lavish him with all of our best, and not be like Herod and the other leaders that just couldn't be bothered. The fifth thing I want to talk about is the gifts. So they brought 3 gifts, right? They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Those are the 3 gifts that are listed. Now, gold is royalty. That's money. That's the monetary value, the most valuable thing for kings. They got gold, and so it's just showing, 1, that they were wealthy, and 2, that Jesus would be king. Jesus is king, and so they brought him the gold that is due and fit for a king. So that's the first gift. The second gift was frankincense. And now all these gifts kind of have meaning, really, and they point to Jesus's life and his ministry and his purpose. So the first is that he's king. The second one is frankincense. Frankincense, or incense, was used in worship by the priests in the temple, and there's a special concoction, I don't know if I mentioned it in a video, that they used to burn with incense that was not replicated anywhere else but in the temple. And even in the early days of the church, it wasn't used anymore. So it was just this fragrant aroma, and it represented the presence of God and the prayers going up of the people. And when Zacharias was in there with John the Baptist during that story, when he's in the temple doing the prayer and the incense burning, he perhaps had frankincense there as well. Incense, when the angel visits him. So incense was a temple and a priestly thing. So what does that show? If it's the prayers, it shows that Jesus is priest, that Jesus is with us in his presence, and that our prayers go up to him, and he is a priest, so he needs incense. Okay, so that third gift, basically the myrrh, is that something to anoint dead bodies for burial. So this is just a gift that is showing that death, and a tragic death, an untimely death, was going to be part of Jesus' future, was going to be part of God's plan for him. Death was going to be something that he was going to suffer through. And so it wasn't just one day you will die kind of thing. It was, you're getting gold because you're a king. You're getting frankincense because you're a priest. You're the high priest. You're the most high priest. And you're getting myrrh because your story is going to involve your death, and your mission is death. And so these gifts show the mission of Jesus and his purpose, and their lavish gifts. And I think the takeaway here for this is that we too should be giving our best to God. We should be giving our best gifts to God. And as these wise men came and traveled and brought these lavish gifts to Jesus, are we giving our best to God? And it's not just tithing, but it's also tithing. Do you tithe regularly? Are you someone that gives a portion of your income to God, to the church, to service, to worship him, to further his kingdom, for his use, as a sign that you are blessed by him, that you recognize where all your blessings come from? You have that job, you have that income because God has blessed you with it, and you give a portion back in remembrance that, hey, I'm giving glory to you, God, because you gave this to me ultimately. And so tithing is part of it. Are you someone that regularly practices the habit of tithing? Are you someone that sees it as a command and gives your income and a portion of your income to God? And not just that, but your gifts, your time, and all of the things he's blessed you with, your talents and your service and your allegiance. Are you giving your best to God? Or is he getting very little of you, or what is left of you. And I think it honors him, and he is worthy to be bestowed all these gifts, and for us to give him our best. And also the sacrifice of the birds in the temple shows that Mary and Joseph came in poverty, that they lived in. And yet here, because of Jesus, so Joseph and Mary don't have a lot of money, right? But the kings, or the Magi, come and bestow him with all these gifts. And then in the next lesson, we're going to talk about how they had to go to Egypt to escape Herod's massacre of the babies, right? And how do you think they did that? They weren't able to afford a lamb to bring. They had to bring the birds, right? So they weren't living the high life. But because of these gifts, they could have potentially used that gold and frankincense and myrrh and sold it and used the money to provide a better life for themselves and for Jesus, to be able to escape to Egypt and then be able to move to Nazareth later and raise Jesus and provide. And so it's just interesting to think that in this, because of Jesus, they were provided these gifts. And so because of Jesus and because of our faithfulness to him, we also are provided for. And God provides for those who are obedient to him, whether it's you're giving your money, or if you're giving your time, or if you're giving the talents that God has blessed you with, or whatever it may be. If you're giving all of that to God, he will bless you in return. He blesses those who are obedient. And the way I've always looked at it is, because I am a regular tither, and I kind of always have been, I find joy in it. I remember getting my first paycheck, and my first thought was, now I can finally tithe. And I don't say that to sound holy or anything, but for me, it was something I grew up in church culture, and I knew that was a thing, and I was very excited to participate in it. I don't know, I probably gave $20, off that first paycheck, but it was a big deal to me because I got to join in on what God was doing finally. He gave me a job, he gave me some money, and now I get to give some back to him. And I've just never stopped doing that from that day forward. And I just look at it like it's a requirement. I feel like it's a command. But for me, it's a fail-safe. For me, it's a blessing. For me, it's an act of obedience and an act of service. And God has never, ever failed me financially, or in any way, really, but financially. God, the money will always be there. And you work the job, but who gave you the ability to get the job? Who gave you the strength to go to the job? Who gives you the health to be there, to provide that income? And that income buys our food. That income buys our homes. That income provides for our families and all that, right? I feel like I can't not thank God. I can't not give some of it back to God. He's commanded it. And I don't do it out of fear. I don't think I do it out of fear that, if I don't tithe, God will punish me, or that God will hurt me. God will discipline me, or he will start taking things away from me. I don't think I look at it like that. I don't know that I ever have, really, but if I have, I certainly don't see it that way now. I see it more as a blessing, and I see it more as a promise. I see it as God's promise, that if I tithe, if I give God a portion of my paychecks and all of my income, and look at it and give him a portion of it, that the money's just going to be there. His promise, he's not going to fail me. I've never seen the righteous forsaken, is what the Bible says. And so when I'm walking that path of obedience, that provision's going to be there. He's not going to hurt me because I'm obedient to him. And I don't fear him hurting me if I'm not obedient. It brings me joy to be able to give to the church and to give to missions and to give to whatever I give because of God's faithfulness to me. To me, at this point, it has become a no-brainer. I do it because that's God's money. I don't know how else to see it. It's all his, but this is his portion that I'm definitely giving him. And I even budget for it. I even look at my, budget for the month or the year or whatever, and I factor in tithing to that because it's just that important to me. To me, it is one surefire way that I can participate in what God is doing and in ways that I can't any other way. It's one way I know that God is going to take care of me because I'm obedient to him and I trust him and I trust his promises. And that is one he has never, ever, ever failed me for. The money just somehow he stretches it. Somehow he's going to make it be there. Somehow I'm going to get a break here or there. Or I'm going to work more hours here or there. Whatever it is, the money, it just has become something that I know he will provide for. So for me, that's kind of, I don't mean to tell that story for anything other than to encourage you, to let you know that God is very faithful. God blesses those who are obedient. And it should not just be our money, it should be all aspects of our lives, really. If you're blessed with the ability to sing or with music, or if you're blessed with the ability to teach, or if you're really good with small children or the elderly, or if you're good at running sound and media, or if you're just really good at keeping up with people and fellowship and remembering names and connecting and networking, we're gifted in so many different ways, and we should be using those to help and to edify believers. That our talents are there so that we bless the other people in the church with them. And so we should be giving our best to God. And I think that's the takeaway here. The gifts are there that these kings lavish. And then because of those gifts, Mary and Joseph are blessed for their obedience and their service. And so that's the points I've got. And the final takeaway, I think, to wrap it up, is that the wise men traveled far. They brought their best gifts and they worshiped Jesus. And this is directly against what Herod and the other leaders did, their lack of response, really. And Jesus is the king and the good shepherd, and we should honor and serve him and worship him like that, with our whole lives, with our money, with our body, with our talents, with our time, with every resource that we have. We should be using it and utilizing it for his glory. And ultimately, his glory is for our good. It's always going to be for our good. If we praise God, if we lift God up, he will take care of us always. And so that's it. And then for this lesson, to wrap it up, I just think it's about worship. It's about dedication. It's about recognizing who Jesus is and bringing your best. And I hope that you learned something and you can share something with somebody just to share Jesus with somebody, to share that God takes care of us. But just try to pick out one takeaway that you can share this week so that make sure that you're applying what we're learning and able to share your faith with someone else. So that's my hope for these videos, that you learn something and then you utilize it, you put it into practice. But that's this video, and thank you for watching it. Join me in the next one. We're going to talk when Herod comes and he decrees to massacre all the boys under the age of 2, and how Joseph and Mary have to flee to Egypt to avoid that. And so we're going to talk about that lesson in the next video. So please join me for that one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next.